In this session, we'll be testing wireless client access with the policy that's within our wireless policy set and using the wireless capabilities of the iPad within the lab. Before we begin testing, let's review the policy within the wireless policy set. And within the wireless policy set, we have an authentication policy in place with rules to deal with MAB authentication. If it's a MAB authentication, we'll drive authentication towards internal endpoints, the MAC address data store for ISE itself. And for 802.1x authentications, we'll drive those towards all user ID stores, which will include the demo.local domain. And then for authorizations, we have our global exception still in place for the IT users, and then our standard authorization policy, which includes an entry for blacklisting as well as entries to match for contractors, employees, and then at the bottom of the list, domain computers themselves, and authorization profiles appropriate for each authorization rule. Okay, as a reminder, our iPad within the lab is physically connected to the admin PC with a USB cable, allowing us to remote control the iPad. The iPad itself and network access for the iPad will be completely over Wi-Fi and wireless. Let's go back to the admin PC and access that tablet. And we could see upon access to the tablet, it takes us immediately into the settings screen, and we're looking at the Wi-Fi connectivity screen where Wi-Fi is currently disabled. And as we enable Wi-Fi, we see a healthy list of SSIDs within this lab environment. We are pod 19, so we're focused on the 19 value SSIDs. And for this test, we want to access our WPA2E SSID. The fact that we're getting requested for credentials is a positive sign. Our WLAN controller is prompting us for credentials based on it matching authentication policy and it behaving as a AAA Radius client, and we'll send these credentials off towards our ISE Radius server as we supply them. And as a reminder, the iPad is not a domain member, so we do need to supply the domain suffix for the login. And then upon entering or attempting to connect there, we get prompted to trust an ID certificate presented by ISE-1.demo.local and issued by root-ca, our domain certificate authority. We'll trust that certificate. And then upon trusting that certificate, we get a checkbox indicating that we've got a successful connection to this SSID. And before we move off the iPad to investigate elsewhere, let's make sure that we document our MAC address for this iPad. And really just the last four characters are necessary, 2D66. Okay, let's investigate things from ISE and open up the live logs to see the results from live logs. Okay, we see that our employee 1 at demo.local was connected using an endpoint with the MAC address ending in 2D66. It matched an authentication policy of 802.1x and provided a matched authorization rule for employee access and the associated authorization profile. As we look on details for this session, we can see the interaction with ISE and ultimately the external identity source, timers associated, and then as we scroll down towards the bottom, we'll see the results box, which includes the value of the airspace ACL that we specified within our authorization profile. As a reminder, this is not a DACL, this is a ACL that resides on the WLAN controller itself, and we see that we've correctly delivered that information to the WLAN controller. Let's investigate things from the WLAN controller. Let's open up clients to see connecting endpoints. We see a 2D66 MAC address connected to our WPA2E WLAN and likewise SSID. If we click on this entity to view details from its perspective, we could see IP address information, user authentication information, and as we scroll down here to security, we can see Radius NAC state was run and we can see that the authorization information provided included the employee_ACL. And just as a quick reminder, our iPad doesn't have a command box where we can easily launch a ping command from, and we don't have any web-based resources on the AP or quarantine networks that we were trying to provide policy control against. But the fact that we're able to confirm the results from ISE live logs and the perspective of the NAD, we can have faith that that iPad will be in good situation for authorization. And we'll do some subsequent testing with the iPad to evaluate web redirection and web-based authorization in a future session. Okay, just as a quick summary, we evaluated wireless client access against our WPA2E, also known as 8021X authentication and authorization from the WLAN controller.